Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the
Uh,
FAIRtax Guys.
it's like trying to
And
start a full lawnmower. You got a scrolling banner. For those of you on radio, we just misfired the scrolling banner deployment because I couldn't seem to grab one side of it. We talk about this every week because we like the banner. It's visible, something that you can stand on a street corner or at a public meeting where those things are allowed, and just stand there and go fair tax. And it's all
indeed,
about
well,
impressions. All about the impressions. Got to let people
all
know.
right. Well, I apologize. My voice is still not back to 100%. We actually record two episodes at once. So what you are seeing this week was recorded at the same time the one you saw last week. And hopefully by the next time we record a couple of weeks from now, I'll get all this stuff out of my system.
Yes, sir. I hope so.
and, and we'll keep going. But we will continue today. We're looking at this top 10 reasons that the fair tax fails us, a video that a listener pointed us to. We started it out last week. So if you haven't seen that yet, go back to the archive and we can go from the beginning. But we will go from the beginning now with my trusty little fairtax.gov segment.
Yes, sir.
Let's get into what the Congress critters are up to again, beginning with H.R. 2854. This is Representative Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania to amend the Internal Revenue Code to, oh, would you believe it, establish a tax credit for neighborhood revitalization and for other purposes. No text in there, so I can't tell exactly what you got to do to revitalize your neighborhood in order to qualify for this tax credit. But Representative Kelly wants to establish a tax credit for neighborhood revitalization and for other purposes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, if you're just joining us maybe for the first time, the Congress.gov segment stresses the ludicrousy of, or the lunacy of, or both, of the legislation going through the tax code to be filed and get debated there, and changing the tax code. No wonder people scratch their head when they're doing their taxes, because who knows impact all of the changes have on a yearly basis as things get updated. But our goal here is that we move completely from income tax to a tax on consumption via HR 25, the fair tax.
Absolutely. I think this one goes in the Hall of Shame. HR 2841 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to require the public disclosure of the names and partial addresses of contributors to 501c organizations that receive federal funding. 501c, of course, being organizations that are tax exempt, and the need for that tax exemption goes away with the fair tax. But this is, again, an invasion of people's privacy. If I want to, contribute to a particular organization, it's really nobody else's business how much money I gave them. It's nobody else's business to even knowing that I gave them anything to begin with. And this bill wants to require the public disclosure of the names and partial addresses of people who contribute to 501c organizations that receive federal funding. That's just fundamentally wrong on its face and needs to go away with the fair tax.
Absolutely. And the more you read about it, the more questions you may have, the more you study the fair tax. And we know that to be true. And as I've said a few times, our volunteer group with Americans for Fair Taxation, is always ready to answer questions, either through a note on the social media or on the website. Ask questions. Let's get the answers out there. If you have a challenge with a part of what you're studying on the fair tax.
Yep, we will be going into some objections that someone has put up on YouTube here in just a few minutes. But let us continue with Congress.gov. Oh, mercy sakes, look at this. H.R. 2833 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a refundable adoption tax credit. I mean, if we couldn't talk about tax credits, we wouldn't have anything to do here on the Fair Tax Power Radio's Congress.gov segment. Tax credit after tax credit after tax credit. All of this goes away with the fair tax. Everyone is treated the same. No special carve outs, no special provisions for this group of people that one guy gets and the other guy doesn't. So, I mean, if you certainly adoption is that it's kind of a nice thing to do. I don't want to get into the politics of that too bad here, but to amend the revenue code to provide a refundable adoption tax credit is just again picking winners and losers in the tax code, and that shouldn't happen.
That's true. Very true. Very true.
Okay. That bill also has a companion bill in the Senate, S 1458, by the way. And here's another one I think I'm going to put in the Hall of Shame. This is the first one is under, making you disclose the identities of your contributors to 501c3. That's a really disgusting purpose. This one is what in the world is this doing in the tax code? HR 2810. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to treat, get this, amounts paid for private umbilical cord blood or umbilical cord tissue, banking services, treat all that stuff as medical care expenses. What can you say? You can't make that up.
Cord blood?
Umbilical. Yeah, I guess that there may be cases when you need that. And there must be, the tissue banks or some kind that has that stuff available. But umbilical cord blood, umbilical cord tissue. So if you have to pay for the banking services for those things, tissue banks, that would qualify under the Internal Revenue Code as a medical care expense if this bill, HR 2810, passes.
Gracious goodness. And that's the whole thing. We get bogged down in the small minutia of the challenges of the tax code as on its surface, just to get through, and then to have little things like that get piled in. It's no wonder that people are scratching their head when they're doing their taxes. Does this apply to me? Does it not apply to me? And then
mercy.
Crazy. Yeah.
All right, one more here. HR 2802 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide individuals, mercy, a refundable credit for a portion of federal income tax liability for 2025. I have no idea what the specifics on that is all about. There's no text in it. That is Representative Gabe Vasquez of New Mexico to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a refundable credit for a portion of federal income tax liability for 2025. That's all it says. So I don't know if just certain people get it or everybody gets it or what. But that's crazy. Another credit in the tax code. Drives you nuts.
Gracious.
Drives you nuts. Okay. Well, I tell you what, I think that's all I can stand for Congress.gov for this week. But let's get back to what we were started on last week. This is a video that a listener pointed us to entitled the top 10 reasons that the fair tax fails us. Now, there's 10 of them. We only got through the first 2 last week. Again, this is put up by an outfit called WatchGuard Capital. That is a man named Stephen Paluga. He's a registered investment advisor in Arizona. And I'll give him credit. He did a very professional looking video. I mean, this isn't just some guy sitting in front of a camera talking. He's got some graphics, and his video presentation, his video production is quite good. So you might think just on the basis of the technical quality of his video that the guy's a credible guy and knows what he's talking about. But as we will point out, he really does not know what he's talking about in reference to the fair tax. We covered the first 2 points last time. We will continue with point 3. His point number 3, his argument against the fair tax, says it's a coward's way of avoiding a tough conversation about taxes, social programs, and unfunded obligation. But here's the kicker. It does all that by pitting us against each other. Your commentary, sir.
Well, nothing pits us against each other more so than the class warfare perpetrated through the income tax system. My goodness, we just heard Congress.gov, and it's, for this person, not this group, for that company, not this company, for this industry, not this industry. The income tax system is riddled with deductions, exemptions, loopholes, and tax credits that some people get and others don't. When in power, both political parties have used the tax code to reward their friends with tax breaks and punish their enemies with penalties. This will continue for as long as there is an IRS and an income tax. The fair tax treats everyone the same. No one pays the fair tax on their basic necessities. We talked about the prebate. It untaxes a person up to the poverty level, which is established by the government on an annual basis. After that, the more you spend, the more you pay. There are no special deductions, exemptions, credits, or loopholes that favor one group of taxpayers over another. Everyone pays their fair share according to their own personal spending habits. No one is pitted against anyone else. Now, keep this in mind. The prebate gives everybody, based on your family size, the same amount. It's actually a tax refund in advance of the payment. And you can use that money to spend on essentials, anything you want to spend it on. There's no book that says you can spend it on this, you can't spend it on that. And depending on your income strata, you may end up with a pocket full of money after that. Plus, you get the raise in your payroll. Pay stub shows no federal taxes coming in. Not everyone pays the same rate.
I tell you what, hang on a second here. He talks about pitting us against each other is a reason not to support the fair tax. And again, you talk about pitting people against each other. If you're going to make the argument against the fair tax, you've got to show that the fair tax is worse than the income tax in that regard. And nothing pits us against each other more so than the income tax system. So I think point 3 is particularly gone. Now, point 4, he says, not everyone pays the same tax rate. It puts individuals at a 23% disadvantage to businesses. Well, sir, I got a news flash for you. Not everyone pays the same tax rate under the income tax. Households with similar incomes can pay dramatically different amounts of income tax, depending on where their income comes from, how many different deductions and exemptions and credits they can come up with. And I tell you what, under the income tax system, the size of your tax bill often depends on the skill and, in some cases, the integrity of your tax preparer. We're going to oppose the fair tax because not everyone pays the same rate. Surely you jest. Go ahead.
The tax code is so incomprehensibly complex that in a Money Magazine study, 50 professional tax preparers came up with 49 different answers on what the same hypothetical family owes in taxes. That was in 1986, and the tax code has gotten exponentially more complicated since that time. Under the fair tax, households of equal size with similar spending levels will pay similar amounts of the fair tax, with no exemptions, deductions, or credits to favor one taxpayer over another. It's a mathematical certainty. And of course, my favorite part of the fair tax is it encourages savings, because money you put aside will accrue in an interest-bearing account or the stock market or wherever it goes, a 401k. There'll be no tax applied to that particular instrument that you're using to build your wealth.
Yeah,
but guy put together, and I've been watching a little bit of it here while we're talking. The author presents the situation where an individual and a business both bought the same house. The individual would pay the fair tax, the business would not. In the real world, there are very few instances where individuals and businesses are competing for the same asset.
Yeah, so that's kind of a red herring for sure. But when you say I'm against the fair tax because not everyone pays the same tax rate, again, compare it to the income tax. Now, it is true that not everyone pays the same out-of-pocket tax rate. The tax rate, 23% inclusive, is the same for everybody, regardless of what you purchase, provided it's a new good or a service at retail. But how much you take out of your pocket to pay the fair tax after your prebate has come in for you, that will vary according to how much you spend. So saying the fair tax is a bad idea because not everyone pays the same tax rate, that holds water like a sieve. There just ain't no way that that is a valid argument against the fair tax. And pitting individuals against businesses is just something that doesn't happen in the real world. Now, his point number 5 is one that we're going to spend a good bit of time on here. This is of all of the crazy points that he makes, this one has got to be probably the most laughable on its face. Are you ready? It makes it way too easy. He says the fair tax makes it way too easy for our biggest tax evaders. And he says those are people who own rental property and small business owners, makes it easier for them to evade even more of their tax obligations. Tax fraud will increase. Have at it.
Yeah, well, it's laughable upon its face. Again, remember, we're not comparing the fair tax to perfection. We're comparing it to the income tax. An objection to the fair tax is valid only if it can be shown that the fair tax would be worse than the income tax. And on this point, it's not even close. I think, what did I hear? It's 97% reduction in fraud by using a consumption tax, because it's paid at the cash register, and it would take two people to cause the issue. With the income tax, one person can create and commit fraud.
Yeah, but illegal evasion is a huge problem for the income tax. We talk about it here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Steve Hayes has written about it extensively in his chairman's report. Jake Wally's done a whole study on it. And now the IRS admits that nearly $1 trillion a year is owed but not collected because it is evaded. So, and if you think about it, the income tax is basically an honor system. Taxpayers are supposed to give the government an accurate report on all of their income from all their different sources, and then honestly claim only those deductions and credits that they're legally entitled to. I mean, you could not start with a clean sheet of paper and design a more fraud-prone, more error-prone system than the income tax if you tried. And you couple that with the fact that the IRS pretty much has to take people at their word. With their current level of technology and manpower, they can only check a small percentage of the millions of tax returns that it gets annually. So saying that evasion is a problem for the fair tax but not for the income tax, your credibility is all gone, buddy. Go ahead, continue.
Well, hundreds of pages long for tax preparers.
Yeah, some tax returns are thousands of pages long.
Even honest taxpayers who are not trying to cheat can misunderstand and misapply the rules. I refer again to that Money magazine study where 50 different tax preparers, professionals came up with 49 different amounts owed for using the same source data. And that's the same kind of thing that you get when you call the Internal Revenue Service and talk to somebody. You might talk to them and a week later call and talk to somebody else, and they're giving you two different directions to go in to resolve your issue.
That's if you even get your call answered.
True. It is, considering, there's not anybody sitting there ready to just pick up the handset. It is ridiculously easy to cheat the income tax system. All it takes is one person with the desire to cheat and the ability to do some creative math or some fast and loose interpretations. On the other hand, it takes two to evade the fair tax. Someone who wants to evade the fair tax will have to find a willing accomplishment inside the store that he's making his purchase from. Otherwise, it's just not possible to evade a tax that's included in the price of the products and services you buy. It's just like the gas tax, North Carolina tax, state tax, federal taxes are included in the price at the pump. This is the exact same scenario that we're talking about with how the fair tax is applied.
Yeah,
Even if it would be cheaper, even if it would be a cheater can find a willing accomplice inside the store, that accomplice is going to demand to be compensated. He's taking a
yeah,
risk too.
absolutely. I
No
mean,
one.
nobody's going to risk getting busted for tax evasion for nothing. So cheating the income tax can be pretty lucrative if you're good at it. But if you're cheating the fair tax and you're having to share your ill-gotten gain with somebody else, then it becomes not quite so lucrative.
Because you go and you purchase an item at the store, you lay it up on the counter, they ring up the total, and there's the cost, and there's the fair tax subtotal, and then the total at the bottom.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
says,
I said somebody that's risking their job and exposing themselves to jail time is not going to come cheap. And that's what you'd have to have an accomplice inside the store if you're going to try to evade the fair tax. And there's another little hedge against this as well. Go ahead.
yeah, the fair tax allows retailers to keep a small percentage of the tax they collect as a service fee. This incentivizes retailers to collect the tax, not help people evade it. Because they're doing that for the state in most cases anyway. There's a calculation and it's all electronic
Yep.
now. You just hit a button and you get a report that shows. Remember that the vast majority of retail purchases are made by relatively few retail outlets. Those big retailers like Walmart, Amazon, they know they're being watched and they aren't going to risk a massive penalty for tax evasion. Keep the big boys honest, and there's very little room for fraud and evasion for the rest of the market. Tax fraud will not increase with the fair tax relative to the income tax. In fact, some studies have indicated that the fair tax will reduce illegal evasion by up to 95%. Let me read that again. Some studies have indicated that the fair tax will reduce illegal evasion by up to 95%. Anyone who thinks that there will be more fraud and evasion under the fair tax than under the income tax is living in the darkest corner of the twilight zone.
Mercy. I tell you what, if you ever hear somebody say, well, the fair tax is a bad idea because people are going to evade it, just kind of remind them how much evasion goes on under the income tax. That's you can tell this guy's just really grasping to try to come up with reasons to oppose the fair tax. Let's see, we got have we got time to do this last one? How much time we got left? Where's my timer? Oh, we got about 5 minutes. I'm not sure we can get all of this one done in just 5 minutes. But what we're talking about is a video that was put up on YouTube. A listener pointed us to it. 10 reasons that the fair tax fails us. And it is an investment advisor in Arizona that I'm not giving credit again. He's got a pretty slick video production. And if you just look at the quality of his video, you would think, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. But if you actually, parse his words and get into what he's actually saying about the fair tax, that he's just not there. And again, it's either an honest ignorance, he doesn't understand the fair tax, or it's intentional dishonesty. And I'm not going to call him out on either one. I'll let our listeners decide which one it is. But this guy is just comes up with some really crazy things against the fair tax. And we will start again with point number 6 next week here on Fair Tax Power Radio. I say we got about 5 minutes left. Let's do something that we haven't done in a while here. That is, remind people of our email address, because again, it was a listener that turned us on to this video we're responding to, the FAIRtax Guys at gmail.com. If you'd like to get a hold of us, if you have a question, if you got a video you'd like us to look at and respond to, anything like that relative to the fair tax, give us a shout here, the FAIRtax Guys at gmail.com. And also, we will direct people to fairtax.org. There's something there called the 1040 Club, which we will highly, highly advise people to get into. And my voice is about gone, so explain to folks what the 1040 Club is.
1040 Club is a a contribution to the FAIRtax organization, and it helps supply resources. People don't get paid, but we do have certain expenses that need to be taken care of. You can join the 1040 Club online, fairtax.org/donate. The tax code is broken. We need to have a unified front in how we develop and deploy materials. And that's the other thing too. On an annual basis, we make new palm cards and business card size that shows the monthly prebate, and those things are not charged to the individual purchaser through the website, through the store. You can go on and get the palm card or the business size card, etc., at no charge, and that's significant. We want that word to be out there.
Yeah, that's fairtaxstore.org. And again, just to clarify, the 1040 Club is a monthly donation that you make of $10.40 a month. That's not a whole lot. So if you can just spare $10.40 a month on a regular monthly basis to Americans for Fair Taxation, again, that we're all volunteers. Nobody takes a salary. No individual works for, if you will, Americans for Fair Taxation. It's all volunteer. We volunteer our time. We volunteer our effort. But there are expenses that we have. We have a rather extensive database that we need to keep. And of course, we're always trying to produce, educational material about the fair tax to get people more knowledge about what's going on. So your $10.40 a month will not be used for salaries. We're all volunteers. We will be doing, hopefully, Steve Hayes mentions this every week on the chairman's reports. We should be updating some of our economic studies as well, so that we have more current figures to show to people about what the fair tax will do for them. That's it, and that's going to work. We will continue next week here on FairTax Power Radio, responding to this video, again from an outfit called WatchGuard Capital, which is a registered investment advisor in Arizona. And he put up the 10 reasons that the fair tax fails us, and we are responding with our 10 reasons that he's wrong. And we've gone through the first 5 points. We will start with point 6 next week on FairTax Power Radio. Until then, we thank you so much for listening and watching and sharing the videos, telling your friends all about the fair tax. But that's going to do it for now. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less?
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may, under the fair tax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.